Hello, everyone. Brother Al McClaney with the Stewardship video. And as always, before we go too far, let's read the description or just read the disclaimer. No advice should be seen as a recommendation or endorsement. So I'm not a licensed financial advisor. This is for educational purposes only. Want to please do your own research. And I am actually recording this weekend's video from my office at St. John Baptist Church, where we have an exciting event that's going on this evening. We have the ordination of 9 ministers. I think that's the count. It's either 9 or 11 ministers. That's an exciting point, and it kind of fits into the video that I'm doing, which is a continuation from last week where we're talking about the pasture experience or pasture experience, and our own Dr. Fielder from St. John Baptist Church sent me a quote from Reverend Tolan Morgan. Says people want giant platforms but fail to properly manage small pastures. And if you recall last week, and you can always review last week's video, we were using the backdrop of King David, but he wasn't King David at the time that he was talking and describing to King Saul about how he can fight this mighty giant because he had prepared himself in the pasture in which he had killed bears and lions when they came to attack sheep. And it got me to thinking about, he was preparing himself in the pasture where no one saw his work. And it could have been small things. Now, I don't think killing a lion or a bear is small, but it still wasn't killing or taking on a mighty Philistine giant. And the continuation of this video is talking about, small things and or small beginnings. And the verse I'm using is Zechariah 4, chapter 10 says, "Do not despise these small beginnings, for the Lord rejoices to see the work begin," to see the plumb line in Zerubbabel's hand. And the plumb line is related to construction. And this verse, some key points that I take from this from a stewardship standpoint is, God celebrates obedience even when progress feels small. And I opened it by talking about the exciting time we have of ordination going on. I was just thinking about these ministers who are about to get ordained. Think about, in some cases, this has been a life's work moving up to this point, or maybe at least in the last 5 to 10 years, they're preparing for this moment, which is, could be described as one of their high points or mountaintops experiences of ordination. Those small steps, whether they were doing their devotionals each day, praying, uh, or leading small groups, or that quiet time, again meditating with the Lord. So here's some key messages as I take from Zechariah 4 chapter 10, or verse 10. God celebrates obedience even when progress feels small. Great works often begin with humble starts. God's spirit empowers what human strength cannot, and your plumb line moments matter. So start the work. So faithfulness is not measured by, large investment accounts or becoming completely debt free. It's also, it's not just those things, but it's also, starting that first savings, whether it be $5 or $50 or $100 or $10, but starting to save first. Then, creating a spending plan, putting pen to paper, or maybe your small beginning is just downloading a budget app. Maybe you start with Every Dollar or Monarch, whatever you start with, or you decide instead of buying that Starbucks coffee, hello Al, speaking right to you, that you decide to make your coffee at home or bring it to work, or maybe you don't go out to eat 3 times a week. You cut it back to, fast food maybe one time. You start bringing your lunches. So you're looking at those unnecessary purchases. Maybe it's that pair of shoes that you said, "Oh, I'm not going to buy. I'm going to forego it." You know, those are those small, seemingly small decisions that those are actually acts of faithful stewardship. So let's change gears as we always do. Exciting time. We're now probably week 3. We always start with the financials when it comes to earnings. Last week, like Intel reported, and there was another big tech company that report. I can't, it's slipping my mind now. Tesla was one that reported. But look at this week. I mean, we've got some big companies. We've got a mix of industrial. We've got some defense stocks like Boeing. So they're not only commercial airlines, but they do a lot in the area of defense spending. We've got Amazon. That's a behemoth. You got Meta, Microsoft. We've got, ADP. We've got Procter and Gamble. We've got JetBlue. I mean, Nucor Steel. I mean, Baker Hughes. That's in the area of energy production, exploration. You got Chevron, Dominion Energy. Typically, you wouldn't be talking about a utility stock such as the other one, Bloom Energy. But with all of these data centers that are coming online, there's a tremendous amount of power requirements. You got ExxonMobil, got Robinhood, O'Reilly Auto Parts, generic, which is often a good trade to make when you're going into hurricane season. MasterCard, Valero. We were in the San Antonio area in which my second cousin was graduating from basic training Air Force. I didn't realize Valero was headquartered in San Antonio. That's a huge play when it comes to refineries because they're not only a energy company, but they specifically in the area of refineries. And of course, you've seen their convenience stores slash gas stations. So all that to say, and I miss Qualcomm and Chipotle. All this to say that this is going to be a huge week, just like last week when it comes to earnings, and it will impact the market. So let's look at some possible ideas based on some headlines that we've seen this week. One of the big things last week, rather, was Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of Defense, or they like to say Secretary of War, was testifying before Congress, him and the Chief of Staff, General Kane. And one of the things was the number came out of the Iranian war, 37.5 billion spent already. Now they're testifying because they're requesting 67 billion to first come from Congress on top of the $1 trillion budget that they're asking for, but they want the 67 billion so they can prosecute the war right now. What is going on? Why they need that? Well, here's a headline from CNN that was over the weekend. Vice President Vance and General Kane, Chief of Staff, have concerns about escalating war in Iran. Here it is: concerns about the U.S. munitions stockpile and other potential implications. That stockpile is being depleted. So you don't have a choice when it comes to replenishing it. That has to happen in order to maintain the security of the United States. So with that comes an opportunity. And this is not a political statement. This is not whether you're for the war or not for the war, but this is a reality of there are going to be companies that profit because you've got to purchase munitions and weapons. And three of the weapon systems that Pete Hegseth mentioned was Tomahawk, SM-3, and Patriot missiles. And so those are being depleted at a tremendous rate. And so I got to thinking about what are the companies that have a role in that production. And you've got Raytheon, you've got L3 Harris, and here are the symbols. You can see my hopefully cursor. Then there's a Tokyo-based company, and I don't know if that's probably traded on the, Nike I forget the Japanese market, Nikkei. And then you've got Lockheed Martin, which is from my office. I don't know if I mentioned, I am recording this, yes, in my office at St. John Baptist Church. I can see over to one of the main facilities of Lockheed Martin, which is, I mean, they're huge in the Patriot missile space. So these are potential, if look at, of course, do your own research as to if this is something that you could have an opportunity. Another way to play that besides individual stocks is to use an exchange traded fund. ITA is the symbol. And you can see here are those companies with exposure in ITA. And by the way, there's Boeing, there's Raytheon, there is Lockheed Martin, and there's L3 Harris. And you can see how it's weighted in those areas. Heavy weighting in Raytheon, RTX. So that's a possibility. But I will tell you, ITA is not inexpensive. I think it's about $219 a share, something like that. Don't quote me on that. So that may still be a little rich for you. And you may say, well, I could do fractional shares. And one of the companies a brokerage that allows you to do that is Fidelity. Again, I'm not advocating or saying Fidelity is a company you should use, but it is one way. You could also do it through, I think Cash App gives you the ability to get fractional shares, but do your own research. Charles Schwab was one way, but Fidelity, I know, has actually fractional shares in exchange traded funds, specifically ITA, and it would have all these individual companies. The other headline that was out there is the president was working on a nuclear agreement with Saudi Arabia. Now, as I'm making this video, um, there's been some issues that have popped up, but I wouldn't be surprised they get that resolved because Saudi Arabia has a lot of money to throw around and they're interested in nuclear power. And one of the big players in nuclear power is Westinghouse Electric. Now, Westinghouse Electric is private, but they have a lot of suppliers that are public. Now, as far as there is a publicly traded company that is involved in U.S. enrichment, and Centrus is the only publicly traded company receiving federal funding for US-based uranium enrichment. And there's the symbol LEU. So as far as Westinghouse, which is privately owned, there are several suppliers that are publicly traded that you may want to do a play on. And they are listed. Of course, do your own research. You can see the stock symbol there. You can use stockanalysis.com or whatever your favorite way of researching companies. Maybe it's Yahoo Finance. Whatever your way is, do your own research. With that, that's this week's stewardship video, but let's look at the overall market as we always close out. QQQ, that's brutal, right? It was already in downtrend, and there was just tremendous amount of sell-off this previous week. SPY not as much, but still, it's more of a consolidation, but so not in as profound downtrend as QQQ, which is the technology exposure, but it was selling off, and then Friday ended with some buyers stepping in. With that, that is this week's stewardship video. So you remember, as always, the foundation principle is Jesus is Lord, therefore he's the owner, but we follow his ownership by adhering to the principles that we read about in his word, and don't uh, don't you know move away from a small beginning to a principle that you study. If that's principle, for instance, of declaring that God is owner and I am the steward, don't just take that for granted that you declared that, you're praying that, and maybe there's some repentance that you need to do because you've been operating as an owner and not adhering to God's word. So with that, that's this week's stewardship video. We'll see you next week.